Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. It's Laura here. In this episode, we talk about domestic violence and coercive control, which I know can be distressing for some of our listeners. So if you need resources or support, you can call 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732, or the 24-hour online services. If you, a child, or another person you know is in immediate danger, please call 000. You may have heard that domestic violence is not just physical abuse. Just because they don't hit you might not mean you're not experiencing domestic violence. But the question then comes to, what is non-physical forms of domestic violence? As Mum and I have been talking to members and listening to podcast questions, we've realised some people don't notice these things as domestic violence. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about the 4 things that you might not realise are DV that are going under the radar. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
So today we're going to talk about these 4 types of under-the-radar domestic violence. And then we're going to talk about, we're going to provide everybody with some questions they can ask themselves.
Yes.
To maybe make them think about what situation they're in and see, just to check if you maybe are in a domestic violence situation or a coercive controlled situation.
Yep.
And then we're, of course, going to give you some directions on where you can go if you feel like that is your case. So thank you for coming along today, Mum.
Yes. Well, thank you, Laura. I think these are a good set of questions that we've come up with. I'm really interested to have people understand this issue.
All right. So first of all, of course, like we just said, domestic violence can be physical, of course. But there are these other types. And one of the things that you've noticed, Mum, is the one that flies under the radar is silent treatment or sulking.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And over the years, and I've had so many people who have their separation is characterised by a very long period of silent treatment, or their whole marriage is silent treatment. If they do anything wrong, they get 5 to 6 weeks of silent treatment.
That can't be great for mental health either.
No, and it's, you realise it's being done to you. It's not, it's actually an act of isolating you and making you feel bad. So, yes, silent treatment is a big red flag for me for coercive control of people.
Yes.
And because you do things to avoid the silent treatment.
Yes. And I think that's, if you are in a position where you've said, I just need some time to think about this, or I need to step away for a moment to calm down and then I'll talk to you, that's not really silent treatment, is it? That's no.
That's just...
But if they're just flat refusing to talk to you for the next hour or 10 days or years.
Well, it's a punishment, isn't it? So when they do it that way, it's a punishment. And it weighs on you.
And it's
so much.
It's teaching you, okay, if I do that again,
I'll get the silent treatment. So I won't do that again.
Yes.
And the children are learning. Well, if there's children in the house, they're not silly. They will see that, that
You're
person's not talking to you.
Yes.
It's juvenile.
Yes.
Actually.
You can't get away with that in the workplace, can you? Like, it's not really a behaviour that is exposed outside. So it is a very under the radar kind of domestic violence situation. And of course, it's not physical. It's not physically harming you, but that could really mess with you mentally.
It does. And like if you and a friend have a tiff, you might not email each other or text or whatever you do with each other each day, but that's not silent treatment. That's legitimate. You're not sitting in front of them, sometimes sharing a bed with this person, and they're not talking to you is demoralising in the extreme. And it's meant to control your behaviour and to teach you a lesson.
Now, also that can fit into the cycle of abuse pattern where, you do something wrong, that you get the silent treatment and then there's a blow up, or they eventually come back to being nice to you again. And then you have to walk on eggshells to make sure
you don't get the silent treatment again.
So that's in the pattern. So have a little think about that and see if that's something maybe that you've experienced.
it really feeds into the rules.
Okay,
People have rules.
So this is one of the other number 2 thing that can fly under the radar of domestic violence where you might not realise it, where there's this list of unspoken rules that you have to follow in order to keep the peace.
Yes.
Or not be getting silent treatment.
That's right, to avoid. Yeah. And each time you get the silent treatment from your partner, they're teaching you to obey these unwritten rules, you know, and so and it's often one person controls what happens in the house and what happens in the relationship. So
an example of an unspoken rule might be, can you think of an example?
Don't ever mention my mental health, or don't ask me about my father.
Okay.
Or
don't ask me where I went today.
No, don't ask me where I went. Don't question me when I come home late, or don't come home at all.
Or the unspoken rule is, if I come home and dinner's not ready,
there's going to be trouble. Yep.
Or something that's going to play into the next one, if you spend money without talking to me and getting my permission.
Oh, yes. Or the unspoken rule, such as who can come over.
Oh, okay.
You know, if they're very rude to your friends might stop coming over. But sometimes they just tell you, that the other party just tells you, don't have them over again. And they control who you have in your home.
So if you've got unspoken rules, I guess you can have a think now and go, okay, I'm in this relationship, or I've just been out of the relationship. What are the unspoken rules? What are the things that I know that if I do, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble, whether it's silent treatment or what?
Well, the other thing to think of is, if you've come through it, what are the little things that you enjoy doing now that you would have got in trouble for before? Like wearing socks to bed, using the wrong saucepan, using a good knife for something that it's not intended to. I don't know, eating ice cream twice a day. All of those little things that you're enjoying now, obviously
might have been unspoken rules.
Yeah, could have been unspoken rules in your previous relationship.
And another test is to ask yourself, are those unspoken rules something that you would have been embarrassed to tell your family about or your friends? So instead of saying, your friends might say, hey, did you want to come out tonight? We're going to be doing X, Y, Z. And you know that the unspoken rule is you can't go out with those people because they're jealous or they don't like them.
He won't talk. Or
you're not going to say, oh, no, my partner won't allow me to. You're going to say, oh, I've got something on. If you're making excuses to hide these unspoken rules, that's a good sign, a bad sign, that it is potentially domestic violence.
And another one is, if you've got something you must go to, like Christmas with family or whatever, the only way that you can go is by being super nice beforehand and buttering them up so that you can go, or you can only go if then they're allowed to go to the sportsman's club or whatever. That, you know, it's like, who died and made them boss, really?
Yes. Or you have to trade off some other thing that you love, and you have to give that up in order to be able to get this other thing. So it's a lot of good girl, bad girl.
Yes.
And it does kind of sound like as well you're negotiating with your parent. Yes. Instead of your partner.
That's right. And the good girl, bad girl thing is a very good analogy, because you are being trained with these complex rules. Sometimes they're very subtle, but you gradually get trained over the years to know what sets the other person off and what causes things. And your life will be shrinking. And if it is coercive control, they are probably picking the things that give you joy.
That spark you, make you happy, and make you you.
That's right, and they'll start chipping those away.
Okay, so we've got sulking and silent treatment. Then number 2 is, do you have unspoken rules that maybe, you know, you wouldn't say out loud, or when you do say them out loud it sounds silly, or you hide it from your family and friends? And then it goes into number 3, which is money. So that if you... maybe you've got an unspoken rule where you're not allowed to touch the money, or you just have no control over the money.
Do you know what I hear a lot? They give me $150 a week for groceries, or they pay the groceries. They don't let me buy groceries unless they're with me and they pay for it.
Or they're so gracious, they allow me to spend $200 a week on clothes.
Or they shop for me.
Yes.
And they bring those clothes home and they don't like what I buy. They choose other clothes for me. But the control of the money is the control of your freedom. So another one I came across where there was never really much fuel in the car. And another person, their partner used to check the mileage on the car to make sure they only went where they said they were going. And gosh, these days with phones and Find My iPhones and those tracking apps, goodness
and
me.
we're going to get that into in a minute.
Yes.
So I guess with a lot of the ladies that we've spoken to recently, and there's been some men where I spoke to a lady who had a card that he would put money in for her. And then he would go through it and say, why did you spend money on this? Why did you buy this many coffees? And really drill down. When realistically, when you're a team, when you're a partnership...
It's your money too.
It's your money too. And I think there's still a little bit of a residual olden days thoughts that just because, they're the man maybe. Or, that it's somehow... that's not your place to say.
Right. Yep, it's very 1950s or 1940s. Yes. And I was listening to a fabulous podcast yesterday about the strength of some medieval women. And there's this impression that women are gradually regaining their power since the 70s when I was a teenager. And we're getting better and better. But the reality was we had been terribly oppressed in the 30s, 40s and 50s. And so one of the tests with this money thing is does your other person buy whatever they want, indulge their hobbies, spend a fortune on alcohol, cigarettes.
And you're not allowed to question it.
And you're not allowed to question it, and you're not allowed to do the same. I mean, if they don't have to ask your permission to do something with the money, but you have to ask their permission, then that's not fair, and that is a form of DD. And I don't even think it's extreme budgeting. I've seen some people say, we were saving. No, that should be a joint effort and it should be joint decisions, and one person doesn't get to enforce it, so to speak. You're both adults. Like you said, it's like talking to a child. Yeah,
you're a partnership. You're not doling out pocket money for you.
And the Family Law Act has always recognised home duties and caring for children as equal to the job where someone goes out and works. Well,
and
ever
regardless,
since 1978 anyway.
Some of the women that we speak to are the breadwinners.
The main ones,
but to the ones that aren't, or the men that aren't, you've got to remember the other partner can't make that much money, particularly if you've got kids, unless you are the one who's doing the running around. So you are supporting that making money venture through doing the jobs that the other person probably
doesn't have time
to do.
And more and more I'm seeing that even the person who's the main income earner, who gets the most money, hands it over to the other person and they completely control what happens with it. So, where they don't seem to feel the benefit of their income. So anything that feels like won't let me allow.
So if you go shopping with your friends and you see some shoes that you love, or you see, I don't know, some sort of equipment for the garden, and you think, oh my gosh, I love it, I would love to get that, and your friends go, well, get it, and then you go, oh, in your head or out loud you might say, I'm not allowed to, unless there's a reason, because you've both sat down and created a budget together that you both agree on. That's a red flag.
It is a red flag.
Yeah. And also the other red flag I think is important to note is if you have no idea about the financial situation. Like some people make the decision they don't want to know, okay? And if that's your choice, then that was your choice. But if you ask, hey, could you explain our situation? And they don't want to, or they avoid it, or, because a lot of the ladies we've spoken to recently, they've found out there's a huge debt, a big tax debt, or they've been making loans or getting money out, or, and their names are in businesses and they're owners of part of the company, all of this, and they have no idea until separation.
Yes.
It's not good.
And it isn't a one-way street. I had a case years ago where the woman in the relationship had used the redraw facility in the mortgage and put it all through the poker machines. So when my poor client, when they separated, he thought they owned their house and they didn't. They had nothing nearly. So it's got to, you really, I understand some people are too stressed, but why are you too stressed to know about your finances? Is it because you think something's going on? Is it because you're not game to ask the other person.
Because you're afraid of what
they say. Are you getting phone calls or weird letters from, from card companies?
Are you allowed to read the mail?
Oh, yes. Do you have any idea what your partner's super is, or are they very secretive about it?
Do you have any idea what your partner earns, what their salary is?
Yes.
Because a lot of people don't.
No. Isn't that awful?
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's privacy and privacy.
Yeah.
But if you're in a relationship...
Yes.
That sort of information should be reasonably well shared. I mean, it's a joint enterprise when you're together.
Yes. So, yeah, that's the money one. Money's a big one, and it does fly under the radar because it can be hidden in we're saving, or it's a budget, or I'm doing what's best for the family.
Yes, or they're better with money than I am.
Yes, which is something that can be drilled into you over time. And you're bad with money.
And that rule, that's right, you can be flagged as bad with money. But that rule also, they give you or allow you to have some money for shopping, and that's kind of a rule. It's unspoken rule is you can't spend more than this on shopping.
And you didn't sit down and create a budget. It's just their rule. And if their attitude is I own the money so I get to say, it's not really a partnership.
Tell them 2023 called and would like to invite them in.
I know. Okay, so that leads in again to the checking on you. You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. Register now for our free webinar to help you make the best decision for your future. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today. It's not really a partnership.
Tell them 2023 called and would like to invite them in.
I know. Okay, so that leads in again to the checking on you. So this one goes under the radar as well. We get a lot of people saying, oh, he really cares about me, or she really cares about me. She wants, or I've got that Find My Friends app, or we've got a Find My Phone app so we can find each other. Or they panic if they don't hear from me for half an hour. Isn't that sweet?
Or he just loves me. She's just interested in me. And you know what? Why I really worry about this one is because it can be very early in your next relationship or in a relationship, and you feel so loved that they want to ring and ask where you are and keep tabs. So that needs some hard heart searching, because it might be that, or it might be control, or it might be just a taste of what might happen.
Yes.
Once the relationship gets longer, and your next relationship, don't be swept away.
Yes.
By this.
Well, I think I have been reading a little bit about the DV situation with people who come out of it, and then they seem to misinterpret what love looks like.
Yes.
Because they've always thought love looked like what they had, and this constant checking up on and constant calling. If a new partner doesn't do that because they trust you and they believe you, and that, you know, it's a healthy relationship where you're not hanging on to each other's coattails every 5 seconds, there is this disconnect and a misunderstanding sometimes from women going out of DV that somehow the new relationship isn't healthy, but it is the other way around.
They don't love me because they don't check all the time.
Every 5 seconds.
They don't love me because I just do what I want. So and then we come together in the afternoon.
So it's so important to go and get counselling if you have gone through any of this to help you get through the other side and not fall back into another pattern and where you find somebody else who does the same thing.
And not teach your child or children that this is how you love. This is how to have a relationship. You've got to get yourself sorted so that your next relationship is going to be a healthy one.
And that love bombing, I guess, is part of it.
It is, isn't it? And then they pull it back, and you never see that kind of intense, perfect person again. But the checking up keeps going.
Yeah, so so love bombing, in case anybody doesn't understand, it's like a narcissistic tactic, but people with narcissistic traits can do it, where they just completely bombard you with love. Flowers, letters, cards, romance,
and they love
poems.
whatever you love, and they want to do whatever you want to do, because they don't seem to have their own activities and things. Yes.
And then they slowly pull that away. People going through that are like, well, what have I done wrong? How do I get that back?
Oh, I'd better not ask about money again, or I'd better not do this or do that.
And then the cycle happens, and then they'll do something horrible, like ignore you or that cycle, and then they'll come back to, the love bombing again.
Yeah.
So,
you think, good, it's better. Yes. As long as I don't ever do that, we'll be fine.
So have you ever been love bombed where all of a sudden they're super romantic or they're super attentive, they're getting you gifts or they're doing things, they're bending over backwards? You've got to ask yourself, why are they doing this? And have they done this before, just after they've done something really wrong?
It's like Anna on Frozen.
What?
That prince. He loved everything about it, and was finishing each other's, and she goes, sandwiches.
Yes.
And of course he was
sucking her in.
For once. That they spoke truth in a Disney movie where Elsa said, don't be ridiculous, you can't marry someone you just met.
Thank goodness.
It's that kind there often really is a very quick hooking up together, very quick proposal of marriage or suggestion of moving in together. And before you find out what they're really like.
Do you find with your clients who've had a partner like that your clients are then telling you, like a week or two later, they've repartnered?
Oh, my goodness.
Their ex is repartnered?
I panic. Yeah, the ex is repartnered, and then my client may repartner and start coming in with their new partner into their lawyer visits.
Right.
And that's a red flag to me, because they've moved from one situation where, let's face it, you're kind of codependent into another situation where they remain codependent.
Okay.
So I have firm little talks with my clients and try to get them to go to counselling.
So there's a really good idea to move yourself away from the same patterns. There's actually a book called Reinventing Your Life, which it helps you identify the patterns that you've been in and how to make sure you don't go back into them.
That's great. It's all about patterns.
It's all about patterns.
Yep.
So, Mum, we've got the 4 things, and now we're going to talk about the questions to ask yourself. So there's the silent treatment and sulking.
Yeah.
There's do you have unspoken rules? There's the money issues, and there's the constant checking up on and love bombing.
Yes.
So the questions that you need to, and again, all of those things individually don't seem so bad.
No.
But in a pattern over time that may get worse and worse and worse in increments, then it is bad.
Yeah, it's like you're chipping off the little bits of you that are you to fit some sort of mould that someone else has made. And people lose their identity. I knew a lady once, she joined Toastmasters, and she had to give a talk about what she was passionate about. She couldn't think of anything she was passionate about, and that was just too long in a bad marriage.
That's sad. Okay. All right. So here are some questions that we would like anybody who's still listening to ask themselves.
Yes. Hang in there, guys.
Okay. All right. Do you deliberately leave things out when talking to your friends and family about your relationship, about maybe unspoken rules, that kind of thing?
Or they may say to you, your partner might say, "Don't tell anyone."
Yes.
If you tell anyone, then you're betraying our relationship.
Or your family and friends won't like me anymore. Yeah. So definitely ask yourself that question. If you deliberately leave things out, then that is a red flag.
It's like that meme. I can forgive you for what you've done, but I already told your mum. Told my mum.
Yeah. The next question is: are there unspoken rules that you must follow that you're not telling anybody? The next question is: are you afraid to see a lawyer? So if you are still living together under one roof, you've probably decided to split, but are you afraid to see a lawyer? And there's a reason for that, even if it is amicable. Because
sometimes if you split, you might still be having a shared bank account, and people are terrified of it showing up on the bank account.
Next question is, do you know your financial situation? And if you don't, what would happen if you asked about it? So if you asked your ex or your current partner, hey, can you explain to us how the money comes in and money goes out in this house?
Yeah, how about we sit down and look at that?
And if you're too afraid to ask, that's a red flag.
That's a red flag.
And if they won't give you the information, that's a red flag. Okay. And are you treated more like a child than a partner? Or were you treated more like a child than a partner? So there's some pretty sad questions, but it kind of explains that the domestic violence emotional part is really hard to nail down, but when you look at it underneath the, shine the lights.
Yeah. It's coercive control, and coercive control is a pattern. One time, someone checking up on you, are you okay? Did you get there all right? That sounds fine. It's that where it becomes a constant thing, and it's that pattern that constitutes coercive control, and the courts are only just beginning to realise that coercive control is actually more likely to lead to murder of a partner than a partner who's perhaps been hit in the past.
So what do you suggest to anybody who's listening today who has answered any of those questions that flags that red flag? What should they be doing?
You've still got to keep safe. You've got to keep physically safe. I think ring 1-800-RESPECT. You need to start setting up quietly and not get caught, setting up a way of getting out.
An exit strategy.
Yeah, an exit strategy. If you can get to a counsellor without your ex and get some help there. I know that the the family violence people in each state will help in those very early days. What worries me is there's not a lot of long-term support for people escaping from domestic violence. So you will need to have family and friends rally around, or at least have a plan. But keep safe, because people subject to coercive control are the most at-risk people.
Yeah.
And, it's hard.
So the first port of call for anybody before you make any moves is definitely go and ring 1-800-RESPECT or find the state domestic violence person, that phone number that you can call. We have the list in the show notes.
Yes.
But it is important that you identify that. Now, if they're already out of the situation, does this...
You've still got to be careful.
Yeah.
You still do have to be careful.
Do they need to tell their lawyers or the court?
Absolutely. They need to tell their lawyers what the situation is. They shouldn't underestimate what their partner might do as they lose control. I think that you can expect attempts to have you come back and expect your lies and so forth like that. But I think it's important to confide in your friend, but not friends that might be swayed by your ex to start looking at you negatively. You don't want to tell everything to someone who leaks back to your ex.
So probably not a joint friend.
No, and not a friend that was a friend that was able to come to the house and be your friend through the relationship. Your best support will be those friends who dropped off from coming around, who your ex doesn't like. They've dropped off because they could see what's happening.
Or family members that you've had to shut out.
Yes, absolutely. So you go back to before you got involved with this person and get your support there. And, like I said, don't underestimate them. As they begin to lose control, they might lose control of themselves. So you're doing yourself and them a favour if you put yourself out of their reach.
And the other thing is, don't underestimate the effect it has had on you, because when you're making these decisions in the early days and even through for the next couple of years, the behaviours and patterns of abuse that you have been exposed to may still be lingering in the background and making you do things that don't make sense in the new reality. So definitely be mindful of what your triggers are, what the patterns of abuse were, what things you weren't allowed to do, and make sure that you're either not overdoing them now or you've gotten counselling for it.
Yes.
Because that will help you move forwards into a healthier relationship. Because just leaving them is great, but getting them out of your head.
You've got to be rewired.
Getting them out of your head is the best way to move forward.
And in fact, really, it's the only way.
Yes.
And you can do a lot of online counselling. I think I've mentioned before that in New Zealand, the victim and the perpetrator of domestic violence both have compulsory counselling.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Because they did identify that some people would go from one domestic violence relationship to another, and because that's the sort of love they...
Yeah, they're used to. It's the pattern.
They've been looking for.
You fall into the pattern that you're most familiar with, and the children do too. So if you've had a domestic violence relationship and you were the child, it's more likely you're going to end up in one. So you need to model that behaviour for your kids for the better.
And you might feel diminished without a strong controlling partner. But that's not healthy. You need to feel strong in yourself.
Yeah.
And then you can stand beside your partner, yeah.
And we can all do the things that everybody else can do. So it's all about working on that. And I think there's no need to justify to people that don't matter.
Yes, that's right.
That you're going through DV. There's no reason to justify your coercive control situation that you've had. So if people start asking, oh, well, that's ridiculous, saying silent treatment isn't coercive control or domestic violence, do you care what they think?
No.
And don't waste your time worrying about it.
And don't hide it either. Don't be guilty about it. I mean, I always say, don't know, Laura, if they didn't want you to talk about it, they shouldn't have done it.
Yes.
And so I reckon let it all hang out. Tell the world.
But before you take that, there is a lot of defamation cases that happen.
Oh, I'm thinking Amber Heard. Yes, you're right.
So you can totally get done for defamation.
Yes.
If you go on a TikTok.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Or Facebook or social media and say, my ex was coercive control.
No.
Here are all the things he did. But there is...
But tell your friends.
Yes.
Tell your counsellor.
Explain them.
Tell your close friend you've chosen. You need to debrief.
That's right. And Mum, I think when it comes down to court... we have done an episode just recently that was really popular called Family Violence and the Family Court.
Yes.
So in that episode, we discuss what happens in the family court,
how it applies,
what you can do,
how you prove it.
Definitely go listen to that episode if this is you, if you have gone through this, if you're ticking some of those flags, then you need to go and listen to that episode as well.
Yeah.
And all of this is general advice. Do not make any decisions based off what Mum and I have said.
No.
But we're just trying to flag it because so many people we've spoken to recently...
They don't know.
They don't understand, and I think it's because... I thought it was very well known, but I guess it's a topic that's not really explored until someone you know or yourself has gone through it.
Or until you've left and then you see it all.
Yeah.
And it's surprising, isn't it, Laura, that a lot of people... they've got degrees, they're professionals, they've got their own businesses, and they are still actually subject to coercive control by the other party, who may not be half as accomplished or talented or even earning half as much as they. So if you think it's something that just happens to uneducated, poor people... That's not true.
No. And I think there's nothing to be ashamed of because the rates at the moment are so high that it's likely that you know at least two other people. And I think if we normalise talking about it, particularly, the professionals, people with, highly educated women who are hiding it and men, I think it's time that we all just talk about it.
Do you know, when I was a little girl, physical domestic violence... was, of course, it was just called a domestic situation and no one got involved. And it was often that women would have black eyes, bruises on their arms, and it was probably pretty well accepted by maybe even 10% of the public that a man could, what they used to say, knock his wife around, beat her. And that's changed. It's no longer normal. And I think most people in any relationship know that if they raise a hand to you, you're out and they're out. And so actually over the years, that norm has changed. And now we need to change the coercive control that has to some extent replaced it.
Yes.
And then I would like to think that in another 50 years or so, no one does that to anybody in a relationship, just like almost no one physically assaults their partner anymore. It's very few, and it's actually a criminal offence now. But back then, if it was in the context of a marriage...
then no one would touch it.
No one would save you. Yeah.
So, and I think that's right. If you haven't been hit, it doesn't mean it's not domestic violence. If you've gone through these patterns of abuse, any of these red flags at all, go see a psychologist, go speak to your family doctor, go and speak to a lawyer, and
write it down.
Be safe.
If you can't do anything else, just start to write it down so that when you start to doubt yourself later on, but she was a good provider and she was a good mother to the kids, just write down what has been happening to you and so you can refresh your memory when you start to get doubts about
Yes.
what's going on.
Yeah.
And
I've
hugs,
learned that
everyone, virtual hugs.
The writing it down is so important because apparently there is this element of forgetting that your brain shuts it out because you don't want to deal with it. So you wipe it out. You forget some of it.
Oh, okay.
And then, so unless you do write it all down, particularly if you're in this coercive control pattern that's happening so much, it just becomes normal and you won't remember. So write it down, but make sure you keep it in a place where
They
it
can't
be
find it.
found.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely check, ring 1-800-RESPECT. Look at the show notes down the bottom. We've got links to all
Get
the
your
other
book.
places. Consider looking at Reinventing Your Life by Jeffrey E. Young, PhD, and Janet S. Klosko, PhD. And of course, definitely listen to our other episodes on this topic. It's super important. And don't minimize what you've been through, and don't justify it to anybody who you don't need to.
That's right.
All right. Anything else you want to say, Mum?
Yeah, it's not you, it's them.
Yeah.
You know?
So instead of it's me, hi, I'm the problem, it's them.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
It's not you,
Yeah.
it's them. And if you've let that go on to keep the peace, you're the bigger person, you're the stronger person. But once it's too much, and it's not you, it's them.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for that, Mum. Bye. If any
Bye.
of this information is distressing, or if you need support in regard to domestic violence or family violence, you can call 1-800-RESPECT, 1-800-737-732, or the 24-hour online services. If you, a child, or another person are in immediate danger, please call 000. If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.